Welcome to an all-new episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Aluchi. Hey guys, and welcome to another exciting episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Aluchi, aka the Elusive Pundit. Honey, how are you feeling? I am feeling well. Actually, I had an exciting time in the mother city. I'm back in Johannesburg. March is a spiritual month across a lot of faiths. So I will be focusing on wisdom from the Bible. The past 3 weeks, we've been finding wisdom from the wisdom books in the Bible. The first one we did was the book of Proverbs. The second one was the book of Ecclesiastes. And last week we did the book of Job. And then because that's all the wisdom books in the Bible, I was like, what can I do to add to that? And I just thought about a topic that I find very interesting for myself, which is the conversation regarding free will and the human being species, pertaining obviously to people who believe that there is a God, whether that God is Christian or not. So this week we are doing free will, and I will be breaking down my talk into 3 segments. The first one is what is free will. The second one is then getting into my main talking point, which is my belief that as much as we want to believe it as human beings, we actually do not have free will. And then the last segment, I will actually just be supporting my claim with Bible verses. And I don't think it's a lot. I think it's 2, because for the past month, we've literally been talking about the same thing, but in like a different aspect of it. To let you know what I mean is that what we learned from the first week, which is the book of Proverbs, is that there is good and bad, and that there is an overarching creative force that we all have to subscribe to. And this creative force tells us to fear the Lord first and then apply wisdom. On the second episode of this month, we actually moved into the book of Ecclesiastes that basically told us that with the wisdom, there is also a very gray area, which means that you don't necessarily get rewarded with good for doing good or bad for doing bad. Basically, life is a havel, which means it's smoke and mirrors. Anything can happen, and we're all affected by time and death. And what we need to do is we need to align our purpose with the divine purpose of our God. And then in the book of Job, we actually spoke about how human beings have no control over whether they suffer or not, and that we must actually just be at peace with that and understand that God knows better than all of us in terms of what He is doing. And I was actually thinking, I was like, all of these things inform us of one thing, really, the fact that us as human beings actually do not have free will. And before everybody gets, oh my God, what do you mean? Let's get into the definition of what free will is. And I will put this disclaimer again, which basically says that I'm not a Bible fundi. What I do is try to find overarching themes from Bible stories. So without further ado, let's get into the first segment. What is free will? Again, before we get to the definition of free will, I will be arguing for the fact that human beings actually do not have free will as much as we think we do. So let's get to the definition of what free will is. The free will definition, according to the Googler, is the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate. I want to talk about 2 things when it comes to that. Necessity. Free will means that you're not acting out of necessity. You're not choosing what's necessary for you to act on. And the second thing is fate. I actually went and looked at the definition of fate, and it says, fate, the development of events outside a person's control, regarded as predetermined by a supernatural power or force. And I will take that to be God. We believe in God, right? That's why you're here. And so going back to the definition of free will, it says that the power of acting without constraint of necessity or fate. And we speak about fate as the development of events outside a person's control, regarded as predetermined by a supernatural power. So that means that if you have free will, you are choosing without constraints or necessity or fate. You basically are the architect of your life. So I'm arguing how that is not true, according to the Bible, of course. Now we move to the second segment where I prove my claim. So I feel like I'm in the court, like when Satan and God were in a court in Ecclesiastes. Oh, come on here, don't do this to me. So I will now get to the points that substantiate my claim that human beings actually do not have free will. So the first point I want to talk about is our naturalization, basically how we are brought into the world. We do not choose our parents or our siblings. Secondly, we do not choose the circumstances in which we were born. We don't choose if we're rich, if we were poor. We don't choose where we were born, whether you were born in Khayelitsha, whether you were born in Sandton in America, in the UK, in Swaziland. It doesn't matter. You don't choose those things. They happen to you. The third thing that you don't choose is your natural talents, things that come easily to you without having to conjure up too much effort to do. You don't choose those things. These things are predetermined by a supernatural force that is responsible for our naturalizations as human beings in this world. We don't choose those things that we are born with. Then we move on to the rest of our lives, which pretty much is determined by the conditions in which we were born under. Based on where we were born, who our parents are, whether they were rich or they were poor, that informs the type of opportunities that we're exposed to in life. The same things inform what traumas we suffer from. There's actually a psychological study that actually proves the fact that human beings are fully formed in how they will be for the rest of their lives according to the first 6 years of their lives. I mean, if you didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose where you were born, you didn't choose which circumstances you were born to, and then in the first 6 years of your life, there's pretty much nothing you can do about it besides absorb that, then it basically means that you didn't choose what else happens in your life, which is your self-view, your cognitive thinking, your view of the world, your spirituality. All of those things then inform the everyday that we live with, which is what career you want to get into, which is who you choose to have as a partner, which is the kind of life you choose. So after all of those things happen to us, where we were born, who our parents are, where everything was going, we then have the ability to choose in later life whether which career we're following, how do we want to be in a relationship, how do we want to exist, how we inform our spirituality and what practices we have, and the aspirations that we have. And you are only choosing after the fact, after you're born, after you're 6 years, after you've dealt with the traumas, after you dealt with the circumstances in which you were born to, and then once you have an understanding of all of those things that are happening in your life, then you get to choose based on your perspective of who you want to be. But is that choice really a choice, or is it something that is born out of a necessity based on day-by-day life? Let's get to that on the next segment. Before we get into this choosing segment, let's refresh and recap a little bit. So you're born, you didn't choose to be born. Maybe you did. People say you choose because of soul contracts or whatever, but we're not getting into that. So you are born to parents that you didn't choose, siblings that you didn't choose, an environment that you didn't choose. And then after that, then those things inform the type of struggle you're going to have, what traumas you have, what you think about, what you feel, and how you view yourself, your spirituality, and your culture. Again, based on things that are out of your control. And then those things later on shape your worldview. They shape your view of self. They shape your spirituality. They shape who you are choosing to be in this life, which then informs what type of careers we have, what type of relationships we find ourselves in, acquaintances, the environment, what we dream and aspire for. Those things happen because we were already born under circumstances that we didn't choose. Now, I said we were going to get to the choosing part. Did you really choose who you are at this time and space? I don't think I did, because if you ask me, I would probably be a video vixen and a dancer. I have zero of those talents in my capability, so those things cannot happen to me. I can be a video vixen, of course, because that doesn't require much talent. But I really cannot be a dancer because I wasn't naturalized with that talent. So going back to my point about free will and choice, we might have a choice, but a lot of the choice is already informed by the circumstances that have already happened around our lives. Case in point, I'll make my example second, but I'll make this example first. So I work in the medical industry and I see a lot of doctors on the day by day because those are like my core clients that I'm exposed to. So one of these doctors, we were actually just having a casual conversation. So I asked him, how did he become an orthopod? An orthopod is an orthopedic doctor. We were actually having a discussion about this free will, and I was telling him that we don't have free will. And he's like, yeah, no, he chose to be an orthopedic doctor. I was like, oh, tell me about it. And he was like, oh, when he was growing up, actually his grandmother had a knee problem which needed a knee replacement, and because they were so poor and were born in a poverty-stricken environment, they were not able to get this knee replacement surgery for the grandmother. And then the grandmother eventually passed away, and then because of that fact, he decided that he wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because he just felt like that was something that he wanted to do based on the pain of losing their grandmother through not being able to get a knee surgery. And he is a hip and knee surgeon. Pretty much what I'm trying to say about free will is the fact that because you do it out of necessity, it means you didn't choose. And because you do it because of fated circumstances that happen in your life, you didn't choose it. You just happened to be in the right direction with the choice that you made. It was going to happen to you anyway. When I came to Joburg, my dream, well, the second dream that I had was I wanted to be in the advertising space. And that didn't happen for me. And I applied in all of these companies. I wasn't getting any interviews, blah, blah, blah. So ultimately, I was like, whatever happens, happens. And then I got approached by a company that led me to my career, which is in education. And I mean, that was my first dream when I still didn't choose. I wanted to be in education. I wanted to be a teacher. And the circumstances that happened after I finished my degree led me back to the original plan, which if you look at it, what 2-year-old is going to say they want to be a teacher, that probably came from the supernatural. And I mean, me following the necessity and the fated consequences that happened in my life actually led me to the real dream that God wanted me to live, which is what I feel like happens to all of us in life. And with that, we will look at some Bible verses that support what I'm saying. It's not a lot though, it's 2. So I decided to do 2 Bible verses. So one before Jesus and the New Testament, and then one after Jesus and the Testament. So the first one says that our God is in the heavens. He does as he pleases. And I'm not going to drag this. If you want to know how God does as he pleases, go to the book of Job. He told us that sit through your suffering because it's his will. Sit through the evil because it's his will. Sit through the good because it's his will. So God does as he pleases. And there's nothing we can do about that, which then absolves us thinking we have free will because God chooses, and that's what he does. And the second verse that I want to talk about is, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him in love, he predestined us for adoption to himself as sons through Jesus Christ. With that said, I am very grateful that you guys are here today. And let's continue the conversation on free will on the chat below. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you guys next week for our hot topic episode.